There's no place like home as the Eagles are back in South Philadelphia after their best win of the season over the Denver Broncos, looking to bring that momentum back here and get their first win of the season in front of the home crowd. Standing in their way will be the New Orleans Saints, and once again, the Birds will have to be at their best. And of course, we are bringing our best to you here at the Kickoff Show presented by Axalta. Amy Campbell is always joined by Fran Duffy. And Fran, Jalen Hurts, his first start and his first career win against this New Orleans Saints team last season. But now the league has the film on young Hurts.
That's true, but you go back to last year, huge game, his first start. Eagles get the win. Also, the only time in the last 5 years that the Saints have given up a 100-yard rusher.
Yeah, he seems to be a bit of a puzzle that the Saints defense hasn't quite been able to solve yet. We'll see how that matchup looks today as we watch the warm-ups thanks to our friends at PA Lottery. And, of course, some of the big news today is that Miles Sanders will be back in the lineup here for the Eagles. He is active. He is back for the first time since his Week 7 injury. And, of course, a huge part of this Eagles run game that since we last saw Miles Sanders has completely exploded onto the NFL scene. Now the third best rushing offense in the NFL, leading the NFL in rushing yards the past 3 games, averaging over 200 yards per game. And now you add Miles Sanders to the mix, Fran. Of course, some decisions for Coach Nick Sirianni with so many talented running backs in the stable. Kenny Gainwell won't be active today, but you're adding Miles Sanders back to the lineup with a run game that has really found its identity the past few weeks.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that the last time Miles Sanders was on the field was that game out in Las Vegas. He got hurt midway through the first quarter, but up until that point, Amy, he was really a focal point of the offense on those first couple of drives against the Raiders. He was averaging over 6 yards a carry. He had a bunch of carries on those first 2 drives. And so it seemed like the Eagles were trying to lean into the run game in that game, and then it didn't happen really until the next week. But it's important to note, I think a lot of people have talked about, oh, well, what is the run game going to look like when you bring number 26 back out into the field? I think they'll be just fine trying to move the ball. That said, they do have a big test here in this game against the Saints.
Yeah, and that, as we look at the offense, our starters here, and we talk about this Eagles run game, that really is the story of this matchup to me and I think to everyone. Strength on strength, the Eagles run game versus the Saints rushing defense. This is the NFL's best rushing defense. They are allowing less than 73 yards per game on the ground. The #1 rushing defense in the NFL. And in these types of matchups, it's like something's got to give. How do you get a little bit of an edge? What makes the Saints defense so stout against the run?
Well, you would think that, oh, they're #1 against the run. That's because they play with a lot of guys up close to the line of scrimmage and, they play a lot of base defense. No, this is a team that is #1 in the NFL in explosive run plays allowed. They're #1 in yards allowed before contact. They're #1 in yards allowed after contact. So they're really sound tacklers. They fit the run well. They don't give up any ground at the point of attack. But they're doing all this, Amy, despite having the 3rd most light boxes in the NFL. And
Wild.
so they're doing all of this despite only playing with 6 guys up near the line of scrimmage on a large majority of their snaps. And so what does that mean? Well, that means when you look across the formation, Marcus Davenport, Cam Jordan, David Onyemata is back in the lineup now, Demario Davis. Across the board, these guys defeat one-on-one blocks. And so when you look at guys like Dallas Goedert there in the middle of your screen, obviously the offensive line, it is going to be all about setting the tone, latching on to blocks, not allowing the opposing defensive ends, the defensive tackles, the linebackers to get off contact. You have got to be able to finish blocks in this game, give those running backs room to work. And obviously, Jalen Hurts is next factor.
Yeah, and an X factor again. I'm really excited to see against this Saints defense that has yet to solve that equation. Of course, awesome to see Dallas Goedert on the field today. He'll be playing today after spending the week in concussion protocol. So we're really happy to see that he is feeling good, and he is probably feeling extra good after getting a 4-year contract extension. The Eagles locking in their top tight end for the foreseeable future, along with his BFF Avonte Maddox also getting a contract extension from the team as the Eagles lock in several young players for the future. It's pretty exciting. A little bit of a storybook week for those two.
I feel like I would love us to, at Eagles Entertainment, to do like a behind the scenes of what those guys are going to do to their house.
They are so
I feel like they're going to put in like laser tag or like a ball pit, like
Yes.
something for those guys to play in their basement together. But I think when you look at Dallas Goedert, we've talked about this so much here, whether it's on this show or Eagles Game Plan, the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast. I think when you look at Dallas Goedert, clearly one of the most talented tight ends in the league. What he brings from a combo skill set standpoint, obviously he's the leader in that tight end room now. So you see Jack Stoll there, you see Tyree Jackson, obviously Richard Rodgers, but when you look at Dallas Goedert, he is one of the leaders on this offense. He's one of the best players on this offense. He can impact all three levels as a pass catcher, and then when you factor in what he does in the run game, he is a huge part of this Eagles offensive attack.
And this is kind of the changing of the guard here at the tight end position for the Eagles. And I think a lot to look forward to for the future. Like we said, we have Dallas Goedert, now the leader, the veteran, a couple of young prospects in Jack Stoll and Tyree Jackson that remains to be seen, but a lot of excitement there, some intriguing guys. Let's talk about this quarterback here, Jalen Hurts, who I thought he played his best game of his NFL career last week. I thought he showed a lot of poise. I thought he was extremely accurate, especially on the deep ball. And we can also give a lot of credit to the Eagles establishing the run game and that offensive line continuity that's really opened things up in the passing game. But let's talk just a little bit more about Jalen Hurts, showing he can win from the pocket. And since week 8, he is #1 in quarterback rushing yards with 186 and second in passer rating, 102.6. What do you think about just how he continues to evolve and what we're seeing brought to this Eagles offense in terms of balance?
You know, after watching the film from last Sunday's win out in Denver, one of the words that really stood out to me most when watching Jalen Hurts was just comfort and poise. This is a guy that looked really confident in everything that he was doing, and that certainly speaks to the coaching staff and making sure that he feels comfortable with everything that they're doing from a play call standpoint. We've talked about how the run game has helped make the pass game a little bit more efficient, and that's opened everything up. And so then, in turn, that allows guys like Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert and Jalen Reagor, Quez Watkins, right down the line, everybody to be more efficient with what they're doing. The Eagles have been the most efficient offense when you look at some of the analytic metrics there. They've been one of the most efficient offenses in the league over the last month. And I think a lot of that has to do, obviously, with the run game, but the second layer of that is Jalen Hurts and his ability to execute, not just as a runner, but as a pass catcher. And one of the things that stood out to me last week was when he broke the pocket, it was not, hey, I'm running to run. I am running with my eyes downfield. I'm going to keep my eyes downfield, slide away from the rush, and deliver accurate footballs on the run. We saw that on that big completion to Dallas Goedert in the first quarter, a couple other examples as well. But Jalen Hurts was really decisive last week in that win.
I think that's a great point, that and I think that speaks to maturity in the NFL, especially quarterbacks that are really athletic, that are able to do a lot with their legs. It shows a lot of maturity, a seasoned vet vibe when they're making those good decisions about when they elect to run. Let's talk about this passing game a little bit more. As we were looking at Devontae Smith, we're seeing, his college buddy here. These two have had a special connection since long before they both came here, but we're really seeing the fruits of that here. The Eagles are now leading, or since week 8, the Eagles are leading the league in explosive plays. They've really been able to open things up. We talk about how the run game contributes to that, but what do you think just about how balanced this offense has become?
Well, and that's the thing, is that when you look at what happened when the Eagles started relying more on the run game about a month ago, is that the depth of target for Jalen Hurts, you would think, it's a lot of short stuff. And no, the depth of target has actually gone up. And it's not been deep ball, deep ball, deep ball, deep ball. They've done a really good job of attacking the intermediate area. And to be honest, Amy, I think that is a much more sustainable area of success. When you look at the Kansas City Chiefs and go back to last year, the Buffalo Bills, and some of the most explosive offenses in the NFL from a pass game standpoint over the last few years, it's not because of what they do in the deep area of the field. It's those 20-yard gains. It's those 18-yard catch and runs with Devontae Smith on a crossing route or on a comeback route. Those are the things where you start to see, that's because that's an explosive play. When you go 18 yards on a play action play, or when you go 28 yards on a deep crosser to Dallas Goedert, that is a huge play for your offense, and that's something we've seen really open up, especially with Jalen Hurts off of play action.
Well, and when you're looking at the matchup for this Eagles offense, especially when it comes to facing in the trenches, facing this Saints defense, we talked about how good they are against the run, right? But this is the 26th passing defense in the NFL. So they really want to make teams one-dimensional. They want them to be throwing. They don't want them to be running. Of course, the Eagles' identity here at this point is balance, and a huge part of that has come from the continuity on the offensive line. But when you're looking at these matchups on the Saints defense, there's a lot that stands out. Of course, in the defensive front, Lane Johnson versus maybe Cameron Jordan. He talked about how excited he is for that matchup. And then Lane also talked about the Saints linebackers. He said they're probably the most active linebackers we'll see. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, well, I think when you look at the way that they use those linebackers, they play 4 or 5 different guys. And so what you'll see over the course of their different defensive packages is they'll kind of do some full-on hockey line changes where 3 guys will step out and 2 guys come in. And these 2 guys come out and now 2 different guys come in. So depending on the package, you'll see some different combinations there. But the one big thing to remember, the Saints are one of the top teams in the NFL in using a dime defense, meaning 6 defensive backs. And what that means for most defenses is that there's only 1 linebacker on the field. That is not the case here in New Orleans. What you'll see from them is that they will go 3 defensive linemen, and they're missing one of those guys today in the Philly kid, Tano Passanio, their leading sack artist right now so far this season. They're missing him. He is inactive for this game. So you'll see Marcus Davenport with Cam Jordan, and we'll see who that 3rd defensive lineman is. But what you'll see is those 2 linebackers, Demario Davis and Quan Alexander, down on the line of scrimmage, and they do all different kinds of things, whether they blitz, whether they're picking and setting up another defensive lineman on a stunt, or if they're dropping back in coverage. It's all a guessing game. So the Eagles have to be prepared for every single possibility when taking on the Saints defense, especially on 3rd down.
Well, that Saints defense is limiting teams to less than 20 points a game. They're 7th, and their 3rd down defense ranked 9th in the NFL. That's another one of their strengths, as well as on 3rd down. What is it that they do so well to stop teams on that? It's a critical down. It's a down that the Eagles talk about a lot. I know you're going to get into it a little bit more later, but just on the surface, what is it they do so well?
Yeah, I'll get into what they do from a coverage standpoint, but really ultimately what it comes down to is when it's 3rd down, they get into a pressure front. Now, that doesn't mean that they always send pressure, but they'll line up with 6, 7 guys on the line of scrimmage, and now you don't know who's coming. Is it going to be a 5-man pressure? Is it going to be a 6-man pressure? Or are they going to drop everybody out and it's going to be a 3-man rush? They had a great sack last week against the Tennessee Titans where they had 7 guys on the line of scrimmage before the snap, Amy, but only 3 of them came. And so you had 2 one-on-ones on the outside with your offensive tackles. You had Cam Jordan and Marcus Davenport both one-on-one, and everybody else dropping out. So it was literally like 3 offensive linemen blocking 1 in the middle of the defense. And so that's what they do so well, is they are really, really aggressive, and they really make you check everything from an offensive protection standpoint. And so for the Eagles, that will be the big test in this game on 3rd down.
Well, and if we look at the trenches on the other side, of course, we're seeing the defensive line now. And another interesting matchup, I feel like this has kind of been, we've talked about how the Eagles have faced a lot of defenses without starting cornerbacks. Another one that I feel like the Eagles have faced a lot of is offensive lines that are really banged up. And the Saints also have a very banged up offensive line, and they're without 2 of their star players. Their 2 tackles, Teron Armstead and Ryan Ramczyk, and also Alvin Kamara, who's kind of, that not offensive line, obviously, but that, do everything guy in the run game, the passing game. Interesting matchup here for this Eagles defensive line, and of course we're happy to see that Derek Burnett is good to is ready to play today after showing up on the injury report this week as well.
So I think I've been thinking about this, and I think when you look at the Eagles schedule so far this season, they've played 2 offensive coaching staffs that have come from this Saints tree and worked under Sean Payton. One was a couple weeks ago here at Lincoln Financial Field against Joe Lombardi and the LA Chargers, and we saw the ball come out of Justin Herbert's hands very, very quickly. The defensive line was not able to take advantage of those matchups because the ball just got out so fast. Rewind a few weeks before that, they went up against the Carolina Panthers and their offensive coordinator, Joe Brady, who worked under Sean Payton as well. What happened in that game? The Eagles defensive line was able to make a huge impact in that one against a number of backups as well. And a big reason for that, the Eagles defensive backs were able to challenge those receivers of the Carolina Panthers. And so that will be something to watch here in this game. I know that none of these New Orleans receivers are household names. That is certainly the case. But you have to still be able to challenge those guys, make sure that Trevor Siemian is not able to get the ball out fast, because if not, if he is forced to hold on to the football, this Eagles defensive line can win these matchups. They're missing Teron Armstead at left tackle, Ryan Ramczyk at right tackle. Probably you would probably argue, one of the 2 or 3 better offensive tackle combos in the league. You're missing those 2 guys. Andrus Peat at left guard. He's on injured reserve. He's a great player as well. Cesar Ruiz, the Philly kid, former first-round pick at right guard. He's really struggled for them. And so I think when you look at this matchup across the board, the Eagles can win these one-on-ones in the trenches, but it still is going to be a full team effort to make sure you're challenging the receivers, force the quarterback to hold on to the football, let that defensive line get home.
Well, and I'm really interested to see where this guy lines up today, Darius Slay. It's always a fun matchup to see who he's on, and of course, Michael Thomas out for the year for the Saints offense. So it's going to be interesting to see what part of this offense he matches up against. But look, you talked about this Saints offense, and Sean Payton. Of course, they always have wrinkles, right? They always have something interesting going on. But it's really, really different this year, of course, because we are in the post-Drew Brees era, and Trevor Siemian, like you mentioned, he's been playing really well at quarterback, but is still a third-string quarterback. He's been outstanding for them. In 2.5 games, 706 yards, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He's been good under pressure. He's been accurate with the ball, but their passing offense is a weak spot. They are 31st in the NFL. They're much better with the rushing offense. They're 12th in the NFL in rushing offense. And we talk about Alvin Kamara not being there, but Mark Ingram back with them, and he has been looking like his old self with them as well. So you always are going to have some wrinkles when you're playing a Sean Payton offense.
Yeah, and so with the amount of zone coverage that the Eagles play, it will be up to everybody underneath. We just saw Avonte Maddox. We see TJ Edwards here. Those guys at the second level of the Eagles defense will be imperative because that's where a majority of these targets are going to go, whether it's Traquan Smith at wide receiver, Marquez Callaway. They like Deontay Harris as a slot receiver and a vertical threat. You talk about Mark Ingram. All of these guys, Adam Troutman at tight end. The Eagles linebackers, the nickel corner, and Avonte Maddox, who also got paid this week. And then obviously at safety, everybody's got to be ready to put the stops on this Saints offense because they're going to want to get the ball out of Simeon's hands fast. That means a lot of quick and intermediate game throws.
As we're looking at the defensive starters here for the Eagles, of course, we mentioned Darius Slay earlier, but let me just give a shout out to this guy, NFC Defensive Player of the Week after the scoop and score last week, his second of the season.
Yes.
This guy has 2 touchdowns this season. He has been playing, he's had an amazing year. He's one of the best in the NFL at what he does. Of course, I feel like he's having a heck of a year for this team.
My favorite quote of any press conference this year was him last week after the game saying, city fumble, country fumble, doesn't matter. They're all touchdowns to me. I absolutely love everything Darius Slay brings to this Eagles defense, but it's not just about the fumble recoveries and the big plays from that standpoint. We know he had that the big game against the Carolina Panthers a few weeks back where he had the 2 interceptions. He's just been so good in coverage. You're not going to pitch a shutout against every NFL receiver. Whether that's not going to be the case, you're going to give up a play here and there. But Darius Slay has been as much a lockdown corner as anybody in the league when you look at his performance over these first half of the season.
Yeah, and if you want to give the all-interview team, the all-press
of course.
conference team, there is not a better
all-pro
must-see TV in that department. You're right. I feel like he also last week was on another level in the press conference. Really exciting. Let's talk about the Eagles linebackers and the matchup that they have today. I thought it was really cool to hear from Ike Reese earlier this week on the Eagles Insider podcast with Dave Spadaro. He talked so much about how high he is on these young linebackers, and he says he can really see a difference in the defense, especially in the physicality of the young linebackers. They're doing really well stopping the run, but it seems like this group is really starting to, kind of take some steps forward, find a little bit of that identity, because this is a young group and not necessarily a ton of experience here. It seems like they've really been starting to kind of get their legs under them a little bit.
Yeah, and I think when you look at TJ Edwards and Davion Taylor, these are 2 guys that are really decisive playing downhill right now over this last month. Obviously, TJ Edwards, he's been inserted into the starting lineup. Davion Taylor coming back now healthy, and we've wanted to see what is he like playing in traffic, Davion Taylor, and he's continued to make strides each and every week. Obviously, he had a couple forced fumbles, that critical one that Darius Slay returned for a touchdown last week against Denver. But I think when you look at TJ Edwards, his impact has been such a huge part of the defensive success that the Eagles have had in certain games. And we talked about the Saints earlier and how they have so much success again with light boxes against the run. So much of that is because of their ability to defeat blocks one-on-one. You're not going to just trade for one going up against the Saints defense. That's what TJ Edwards has brought. He is defeating blocks and getting to the football. You have to allocate 2 bodies to him in order to keep him away from the football, keep him away from the ball carrier. I think that's a big part of why he's been such a big part of this Eagles defense over the last month.
Yeah, they've really taken some steps forward. You can really see it seems like this team as a whole is starting to kind of find that identity on both sides of the ball, starting to click a little bit. And of course, now we're seeing a familiar face here, Malcolm Jenkins back in Philadelphia, and a fantastic Eagle, multiple-time Pro Bowler, I believe 3 times. Yeah, 3-time Pro Bowler, and of course a Super Bowl 52 champion here with the Eagles, a huge part of that Super Bowl team. An amazing player on this defense for the Eagles during his time here, and of course an amazing person off the field, has done so much good work in the community. He was also the Eagles Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee. It's great to see him back even even if, we wish he was in different colors today.
Yeah, obviously you're wishing a loss for Malcolm today, but I think
Right.
when you look at Malcolm Jenkins and the impact he made on and off the field was such a big part of the Eagles and the Philadelphia community during his time here with the Eagles. So, obviously great to see him back at the Lincoln Financial Field.
Yes, of course, and we are not cheering for him today, though we are cheering for him every other day of the year. Let's talk big picture with this Eagles team. As we've talked about, they're really starting to find that identity on both sides of the ball, as this has been a team in transition, the new coaching staff, getting to know the players, kind of finding that, a coaching staff that is also, finding their identity as NFL coaches as well. It seems like just even in the last few weeks, they've gotten the run game going, they've gotten the passing game going, they've gotten the defense has been shutting down teams much more. They've been getting those takeaways. They've cleaned up the penalties. What stands out to you just about it? Does it seem like that there's kind of been a turning point here a little bit?
I think the big thing is just continuing to do your job defensively. And so what we've seen is the corners play not even more press coverage. It's not necessarily about getting up and playing more press. It's about, hey, we're going to challenge receivers a little bit more mid-route. And even going over to the offensive side of the football. Shane Steichen talked this week about, hey, we didn't have any penalties on that side of the ball last week. So everybody doing their job pre-snap, making sure that you're not lined up wrong, you don't jump off early. Everybody's just doing their job, and that allows you to be efficient and move the football. Defensively, that means you're being efficient, you get into 3rd and long, and you get off the field. So I think really on both sides, we've seen this offense, this defense really start to play a little bit more efficiently across the board.
And of course, we've talked a little bit about the offensive line today, but I think it has been a unit that we haven't talked as much about this season, probably because they've just been doing such a good job. And in the past, the past few years, there's been so many injuries and so much youth, and now you're seeing these young guys who have this experience. They are, they have this consistency. They have this cohesive unit now. You've got your veteran leadership in Jason Kelce and in Lane Johnson, and then you have your young players who have continued to step up, and of course Jordan Mailata, who we'll hear from a little bit later in the show as well. But just what stands out to you about this offensive line? When you're not talking about them, they're doing a really good job.
Yeah, obviously they're extremely well coached with Jeff Stoutland, one of the best in the league in terms of offensive line coaches. But you have to give a lot of credit to the players themselves, right? And I think when you look at Lane Johnson, he was outstanding last week against the Denver Broncos. Jordan Howard, Boston Scott, those guys were able to run off of his backside a number of times for big plays. Jason Kelce, the glue that holds it all together. Jordan Mailata continues to be impressive week in and week out. And the Eagles just continuing to bring those young guards along as well. Landon Dickerson, he's at his best when he's moving forward, just blowing guys off the football. We've seen that. He's made jumps in pass protection recently as well. So just continuing to see the young guys continue to improve and the older guys keep that high level of play. That means this is going to be one of the better offensive lines in football.
What do you think is going to be the biggest challenge for the Eagles against the Saints defense today?
It's definitely 3rd down. And I think it's going to be imperative. They've done a really good job over these last few games of not getting into 3rd and long because of how efficient they've been running the football and hitting some of these underneath throws. You don't want to be in 3rd and 8 against this defense. You don't want to be in 3rd and 11. You want to have as many 3rd and 3s, 3rd and 4s, even a 3rd and 5. A little bit hairy there against the Saints front. You want to be in as many of those 3rd and shorts as possible. Really don't let them pin their ears back and go, because that's where they are their most dangerous.
Well, and the Eagles 6th in the NFL in 3rd down offense with 44.2 percentage. So that has been an area of strength for the Eagles as well. And of course, we've talked about that 3rd down defense for the Saints. This seems like there are many matchups here that are just strength on strength. It's going to be, it's always a fun chess match when you have this, strength on strength in the NFL. And so with that, we'll now bring in the Eagles insider, Dave Spadaro, coming to us live from Lincoln Financial Field. Dave, Jalen Hurts is not the same quarterback that beat the Saints last December. How would you evaluate Hurts from his first start until now?
Yeah, it's really night and day here as we get ready for his, 15th start in the NFL. He was back then helter-skelter in the pocket. He was an athlete playing the quarterback position, learning the quarterback position, and we've seen such great strides this year. The way he's handled the blitz, the way he's gone through his progressions, the way he's hung in the pocket. His red zone numbers, he's 2nd best in the NFL. 2nd best in the NFL in red zone passer rating, and that is something that is really difficult for a young quarterback to master. So today will be a different challenge for him. The Saints are not going to be taken by surprise with his getting to the edge, his athletic ability, I think it'll be a fascinating matchup to see how he handles the pressure from the Saints. But certainly, he's made great strides, and no surprise and no coincidence. As Jalen has grown, so has this offense.
And Dave, obviously Jalen was the storyline the last time these two teams played. What do you think is the big storyline here in this matchup today?
You know, Fran, I feel like the Eagles are forging an identity, and we're really close to kind of identifying what this team is. And what is it? So, talking to Nick a couple times over the last few weeks here, it's been physicality is something that he really has been preaching. And you see it from the way the offensive line has played bully ball, running the football, the way the defensive line has been winning in the trenches. So, you know, has this team found its identity? I think today will really go a long way toward establishing it kind of once and for all. We've waited here 10 games. What is this Eagles team all about? We're finding out that they can run the football first and foremost offensively. We're seeing a quarterback grow. We're seeing a young wide receiver very comfortable in that number one position. Tight ends getting great production. And then defensively, when they've been able to attack the line of scrimmage, they've had success, and they've been taking the football away here in the last 7 weeks.
Yeah, Dave, I think we saw all of that from this team in their win over the Denver Broncos, and the question is, can they do it 2 weeks in a row? So what is it going to take for the Eagles to get the win at home today?
You know, I know that everybody has talked about the Eagles' running offense, which is first in the NFC, third in the NFL, dominant these last few weeks against the Saints' number one ranked run defense. But I just want to go off the beaten track here a little bit and tell you, if the Eagles are explosive in the pass game, crossing routes, rub routes, the Saints have been susceptible to that. The last 2 weeks, New Orleans has given up 7 passing plays of 20-plus yards in losses to Atlanta and Tennessee. So I guess my key would be kind of like, hey, can the Eagles be explosive in the pass game? Certainly want to run the football, but I'm looking for chunk plays in the pass game against a really good secondary. That matchup with Devontae Smith and Marshawn Lattimore is worth the price of admission today. Where else can the Eagles attack the Saints in the secondary? So I want to see some big plays in the passing game.
Yeah, that is certainly a matchup to look forward to look forward to watching today. Dave, thanks so much. We'll catch up with you later.
All right, guys, have a great game.
Brent, what is this one coming down to for you today?
Well, Dave wanted to take us off the beaten path, stay away from the run game. I'm going to go right back to that beaten path because I think the Eagles really do need to win the battle here in the run game. When you look, this is a strength versus strength situation where you've got the best rushing attack in the NFL over the last few weeks going up against the best run defense in the NFL over the last few weeks. Who is able to win that battle? I think that will go a long way towards determining who wins this game. And we know that Jalen Hurts can be that X factor. And I think when you go back to the way that the Eagles attacked the Denver Broncos a week ago, one of the things that really stood out to me, it was not just the basic inside zone and basic zone read that we've seen from them previously. I thought against the Denver Broncos, they really opened up the different quarterback run elements. They were reading different players. They were getting the football to different ball carriers based off of how defenses were deploying guys, and Jalen Hurts was really decisive, and the schemes were really good. So I think that's something to watch here in this game. It's not going to be just Jalen Hurts turning around and handing the football off to Miles Sanders and Jordan Howard. It's going to be him reading defenders and then trying to see exactly where they can attack them at their weakest.
I completely agree. I think this is coming down to Jalen Hurts. And look, we've talked about this Eagles offense establishing an identity. To me today, we've talked about the growth of Jalen Hurts. It's time for Jalen Hurts to show that growth, especially in this matchup against the Saints defense. We talked about he had the win over the Saints defense last time they played. He caught this team by surprise. He was a young quarterback. It was his first NFL start. Now they've got film on this guy. The league has film on this guy, and he's evolved a lot since then. We talked about that as well. This Saints defense is going to dare you to throw the ball. They want to make you one-dimensional. This is an area where Hurts continues to evolve. He continues to grow. He continues to show poise, accuracy, and great decision-making. And today we need to see him put all of that together against the Saints defense that is going to try to make teams one-dimensional. That is the challenge for the young quarterback today. So as the Eagles continue to build for their future, they now have 4 young players from the 2018 draft class under contract for the future. Dallas Goedert, Josh Sweat, Avonte Maddox, and Australian prodigy Jordan Mailata. The Eagles left tackle joins our own Mike Quick for this week's one-on-one interview presented by Podma Hockey.
I'm joined by Eagles left tackle Jordan Mailata. Jordan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, mate.
So, over the past 4 weeks, you're a part of an offensive line that has become the #1 rushing offensive line in football. What is it that has clicked and worked so well for you guys?
I think it's nice that we have the same line every week that we've had in the past 4 weeks. We're able to understand each other's movements and the feeling, get the feel that you need to have when you play next to somebody. 2, it's the coaching. Coach Stout and Coach Sirianni are very adamant on the right angles, the right technique, the timing of screens, the play action, the RPOs. They're all very detailed. And so when we go into those meeting rooms, Coach Stout does a phenomenal job on preparing us on, the what ifs. What if this happens? So, we'll always have an answer to whatever the defense plays. So, 1, it's the cohesiveness with the boys, having the same O-line, the continuity of that. And then 2 would be the coaching.
So Nick Sirianni, after the game on Sunday, he talked about how physical you guys were, the physicality of the game. Do you see that evolving?
Yeah, I believe that, with our strength stuff and what we're doing in the gym is translating over to the field. And when you watch the film, you can see how physical we are. And there are plays where we lack that physicality. And so that's why I know that we can evolve. And I know that we can just because of the guys in the room, the leaders that we have, Jason Kelsey and Lane Johnson and Brandon Brooks, even Isaac Somalo, even he's still around about in the locker room, just giving tips to the young guys. And it's just incredible to have that kind of connection in that room, to be able to rely on each other and give advice to us young guys to better our game and to play with more physicality. So definitely think that we can evolve even further than what we are doing now.
And in that same vein, we saw a play where Lane Johnson in the game just grabbed the guy, a big 270-pound guy, and just tosses him to the side. What was the reaction in the film room when you guys see the play where Lane tossed the guy and just creates a lane for Jordan Howard to run? How did the room react to that?
I mean, it's Lane Johnson. Enough said there. It's Lane Johnson just doing Lane Johnson things, freaky stuff. He's a freaky-ass player, hell of an athlete. It's the plays that he makes during the game. You can just see how great he is. And so, the experience that he carries with him, along with his technique and his power and strength, that's why he makes those plays.
Jordan, thank you for joining us, man, and best of luck here at the Link against the New Orleans Saints.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
The Philadelphia Eagles and Axalta Coding Systems have built a roster of all-pro teachers. Go to philadelphiaeagles.com/Axalta All-Pro Teachers to view this year's outstanding recipients. Eagles fans score official NFL gear every week just by drinking Pepsi. Purchase Eagles Pepsi bottles or packs, scan the code to start building points, and redeem them for Eagles gear or a shot at the grand prize every single week. Visit madeforeagleswatching.com for rules and to enter. All right, we just heard from Jordan Mailata there in that one-on-one interview with Mike Quick. He continues to be a huge part of this Eagles offensive line moving forward, going from no experience at all playing the game to now the starting left tackle of the Philadelphia Eagles. Quite a journey for this prospect or player.
Yeah, I mean, no question. I think when you look at Jordan Mailata and his journey, certainly the less traveled path, we'll say, to the NFL, having not played it down. I'm going to be honest, I had no idea who Jordan Mailata was until he walked into the building for his pre-draft visit. So
that is a deep cut.
Yeah, I mean, no question about it. So huge credit, obviously, to the scouting staff, to Howie Roseman for the willingness to make him a draft choice when I would say the majority of people will say, oh, that guy's never played it down. Let's let him be an undrafted free agent. The Eagles beat the rest of the NFL to Jordan Mailata and allowed him to develop. And that's always been my big thing when talking about young players, is that you have to give them time to develop. Yes, he is a unique story because he never played it down, but I think when you look at all young players, whether it's because of physical reasons, technical reasons, mental reasons, you got to give them time to develop. Not every rookie is going to come into the NFL. Not every second-year player is going to come into the NFL ready to play at a high level. Give these guys time to develop.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's actually something I almost get a little preachy about when teams throw young guys out there too soon. Sometimes players never mentally recover from that. So the fact that this team has been able to develop Jordan Mailata, give him time, and put him in a position of success, I think is huge. And of course, he's going to be facing a really tough defense today, which brings us to your Rico Extra Point.
Yeah, we talked a lot about this Saints defense and what they're going to do on third down. And I mentioned what they do up front, a lot of those pressure looks. Now, if they're not going to blitz, what they'll do is they'll play it safe and they'll play what's called cover 2 man. And here's exactly what cover 2 man looks like and how the Eagles can attack it. What cover 2 man is you're essentially going to get 2 high safeties. So those guys are going to play in the deep part of the field, and then you're going to get man-to-man coverage across the board. So you've got 5 guys in man-to-man with 2 high safeties, just a 4-man rush. Those 2 high safeties, they're going to play each in the to split the field in half. So they're going to cut the field in half, and now you've got underneath man coverage, and they'll play what's called trail technique, and that creates very tough throws for the quarterback because you got to get it over the corner and under the safety. So if you're the Eagles, how do you attack it? Well, there are a couple different ways you could do that. Number 1, you can run crossing routes, have Devontae Smith and Quez Watkins running away from those guys using the length of the field, or you could do different rub routes. We've seen the Eagles do this. Go back to Devontae Smith's opening touchdown against the Atlanta Falcons back in week 1. And then obviously another aspect to this that is going to be the X factor is Jalen Hurts. And we saw that last week against the Denver Broncos, that 31-yard run. Eagles' longest run of the day came from Jalen Hurts. When he dropped back and saw man coverage, he took off. And so the Eagles against cover 2 man in this game. The Saints play more man coverage than just about anybody in the NFL. Huge part of this matchup, something I will be watching very early in this game.
Of course, the Saints defense will be prepared for Jalen Hurts today, but Jalen Hurts, much better quarterback than he was even just a few months ago. So, Eagles fans, of course, there is a new way for you to get a recap of each game. Check out our voice app on Alexa and Google devices. For more info, go to philadelphiaeagles.com/voice. And, of course, you can get a full recap of today's game immediately following the game on the postgame show presented by Rico, where you'll hear from coaches and players live, as well as instant analysis and reaction from the game. You do not want to miss it. So now we will see, can the Eagles put it all together on their home turf today? The Saints are on deck. Enjoy the game, everybody, and go Birds.